The catapult fires. A Marine F-35C Lightning II rips off the deck of the USS Abraham Lincoln at 1:15 in the morning, Eastern Standard Time, February 28, 2026. The ship is in the North Arabian Sea, 500 miles from the southern coast of Iran. The aircraft climbs into the dark, folds its wings into stealth profile, and turns toward Iranian airspace. It is not alone. A second F-35C launches behind it. Then a third, F/A-18 Super Hornets follow. Above them, somewhere over Israel, F-22 Raptors are already airborne. Far to the west, B-2 stealth bombers from Whiteman Air Force Base are crossing the Atlantic. Inside Iranian Air Defense Command, every screen is sweeping for incoming aircraft. The screens stay clean. The American carrier they can see. The aircraft launching from it they cannot. This is Operation Epic Fury, and the lead aircraft on the deck of the USS Abraham Lincoln, the one Iran's radar cannot reliably detect, the one launched by the only Marine F-35C squadron in the entire carrier air wing, is the weapon this story is about, the F-35C Lightning II, carrier-based, stealth, and inside Iran's defensive bubble before Iran's defensive bubble even knew it was being entered. 3 weeks earlier. To understand why the night of February 28th went the way it did, you have to go back 3 weeks. February 3rd, 2026, same carrier, same squadron, same pilot pool. The USS Abraham Lincoln is operating in the Arabian Sea, roughly 500 miles from the southern Iranian coast. CENTCOM detects an Iranian Shahed 139 drone tracking inbound to the carrier. The Shahed 139 is a strike-capable variant. It is not on a surveillance run, it is on an attack profile. CENTCOM transmits de-escalatory measures. The drone does not respond, it continues toward the ship. A Marine F-35C from Marine Fighter Attack Squadron 314, the Black Knights, launches off the Lincoln. Within minutes, the F-35C closes range, locks the Shahed, and shoots it down over open water. It is the first F-35C combat shootdown in the buildup to Operation Epic Fury. CENTCOM confirms the kill in a statement attributed to spokesperson Captain Tim Hawkins. The Marine pilot returns to the deck. The Lincoln continues its station. Hours later, the second move comes. 2 IRGC Navy fast boats and an Iranian Mohajer reconnaissance drone close on the U.S.-flagged tanker MT Stena Imperative inside the Strait of Hormuz. They are not running a flag check. They are signaling boarding intent. The USS McFall, a Navy destroyer, hull number DDG-74, breaks toward the tanker at full speed. U.S. Air Force defensive air support is launched into the strait. The IRGC boats peel off. The Mohajer drone is escorted out. The Stena Imperative continues its passage. In a single afternoon, Iran has tested 2 layers of U.S. naval power. The carrier layer, where the F-35C and the strait layer where the destroyer answered. Both layers held, but the more important fact is what Iran learned and what Iran did not learn. Iran learned that the McFall reacts in minutes. Iran learned that U.S. air support over the strait is on alert. What Iran did not learn, what Iran could not learn, was the radar signature of the aircraft that killed the Shahed 139. Because there was no radar signature. The F-35C had been there. The F-35C had fired. The F-35C had returned, and Iran's air defense picture had registered none of it. That is the data point that should have changed Iran's planning. It did not. 25 days later, Operation Epic Fury opened. The ghost weapon. The F-35C Lightning II is the carrier-based variant of the Joint Strike Fighter. There are 3 variants in the family. The F-35 flies from conventional runways. The F-35B is short takeoff, vertical landing used by the Marines off amphibious assault ships. The F-35C is the only variant designed for catapult launch and arrested recovery aboard a Nimitz-class or Ford-class supercarrier. The C variant is built different. The wings are larger and they fold for hangar storage below deck. The landing gear is reinforced for the violence of a catapult shot and the harder violence of a tailhook landing on a moving deck. The tailhook itself is a separate engineering effort designed for repeated cycles in high-tempo maritime operations. Range and endurance are greater on the C variant than on the A or the B. From a carrier in the North Arabian Sea, an F-35C can reach targets across Iran, strike, and return without aerial refueling. On most profiles, Internal Weapons Bay carries AIM-120OAMRAAMS for air-to-air. For ground strike, it carries GBU-31 and GBU-32 JDAMS for hardened and standard targets, GBU-12 Paveway, 2 laser-guided bombs for precision close work, and the GBU-53 Stormbreaker, a small diameter bomb that can hit moving targets through weather, smoke, and dust. The aircraft is built around a single Pratt & Whitney F135 engine producing roughly 43,000 pounds of thrust on afterburner, the most powerful fighter engine in service. The pilot flies behind a panoramic touchscreen cockpit display and inside a helmet-mounted display system that lets him look through the floor of the aircraft using the distributed aperture sensors mounted around the airframe. Every weapon stays inside the bay. Nothing hangs off the wings. Nothing breaks the radar profile, and the radar profile is the part that matters. The frontal radar cross-section of the F-35 is, in terms public sources will accept, comparable in size to a marble. Iranian Bavar 373 long-range surface-to-air missile systems are designed to detect fighters and bombers at hundreds of kilometers. They are not designed to detect marbles. But stealth is only the first layer. The second layer is the F-35 as a sensor platform. The aircraft's mission systems pull data from its onboard radar, its electro-optical targeting system, its distributed aperture system, and from every other F-35 in the formation. That picture is fused, encrypted, and pushed across the strike package over secure data links. Inside Operation Epic Fury, the F-35C is sharing that picture in real time with F/A-18 Super Hornets off the Lincoln, with F-22 Raptors operating from Avda Air Base in Israel, with EA-18G Growler electronic attack aircraft, and with B-2 stealth bombers running long-range strike from Whiteman. The F-35 sees what the rest of the strike package cannot, and then it tells them. By March 4th, 6 days after Epic Fury opened, the assessment from the top of the U.S. military is delivered publicly. General Dan Kane, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, confirms the United States has achieved localized air superiority across the southern flank of the Iranian coast. F-35s and other survivable aircraft in his framing are operating deeper inside Iranian territory. Localized air superiority is a specific term. It does not mean Iran's air force has been destroyed. It means that in the airspace the U.S. wants to operate in, on the timing the U.S. wants to operate on, U.S. aircraft are flying without effective contest. That is what the F-35C bought on a carrier deck with a folded wing 500 miles offshore. The Black Knights. There is one fact about Operation Epic Fury, one specific operational fact, that reframes everything you have just heard. CENTCOM has released imagery of F-35Cs flying combat missions from USS Abraham Lincoln. The images show different airframes, different tail numbers, different sortie cycles, but it is the same squadron. Marine Fighter Attack Squadron 314, the Black Knights, is the only F-35C unit assigned to Carrier Air Wing 9 aboard USS Abraham Lincoln. Roughly 10 aircraft, 1 Marine squadron, 1 pilot pool. That is the entire F-35C presence over Iran from the carrier. 10 airframes, give or take, doing the work. These 10 aircraft, between them, are reshaping the air war in the Persian Gulf region. They are the platform behind the localized air superiority statement. They are the sensor node behind the integrated strike picture. They are the reason Iran's air defense operators are studying a threat they cannot count on radar and cannot count on the deck either, because CENTCOM does not publish full sortie schedules. VMFA 314 was the first U.S. Marine squadron to declare initial operational capability on the F-35C in February 2021. They were the first to deploy on a carrier with the C variant aboard USS Carl Vinson in 2021. The work that validated the carrier deck cycle, the sortie generation rate, and the use of the F-35C as a forward sensor node was done by this squadron and the squadrons that followed it on Vinson and Lincoln. That validation, done in peacetime, is the reason the night of February 28th ran the way it did. The Nimitz-class carrier deck is built around this rhythm. Aircraft launched off the bow on 2 catapults, aircraft recovered onto the angled deck on 4 arrestor wires. The cycle runs around the clock when the carrier is on combat operations. Every recovery feeds the next launch. For the F-35C, the cycle is unforgiving. The arresting wire has to take the load. The tail hook has to grab the wire. The folded wing has to clear the spotting line. The maintenance crew below has to turn the airframe in time for the next launch window. Ordnance handlers have to stage the JDAMs, the Paveway 2s, and the storm breakers in the magazine elevator and bring them to the deck on cue. Fuel handlers run hot refueling on the spot. Each F-35C off the catapult carries fuel and weapons that the deck crew below loaded under blackout conditions in a magazine system designed for the Cold War-era carrier air wing and now adapted to handle the precision-guided ordnance the F-35C drops over Iran. A Nimitz-class carrier, USS Abraham Lincoln, displaces around 100,000 tons. Crew complement, including the embarked air wing, is just over 5,000 sailors and Marines. The strike group around her includes Aegis-equipped Arleigh Burke destroyers, a Ticonderoga-class cruiser, a fast attack submarine in support, and a fleet replenishment ship for fuel and stores. Every one of those ships is in the fight to keep the deck cycling. 10 aircraft, 1 deck, 1 squadron, and a country across the water trying to find them on screens that will not show them. That is also the part Iran's air defense doctrine had no model for. The cost of winning. This is not a story where the U.S. side wins clean. March 19, 2026. A U.S. Air Force F-35A, not the Carrier C variant, the conventional A variant operating from a land base, makes an emergency landing after a combat mission over Iran. CENTCOM confirms the aircraft landed safely. The pilot is in stable condition. The cause of the emergency in the official statement is under investigation. CNN reports, citing anonymous defense sources, that the aircraft was hit by Iranian fire during the mission. CENTCOM has not publicly confirmed that account. The technical question behind the incident is the question the war zone laid out before the campaign even started. Iran cannot defeat F-35 stealth at altitude. Iran's adaptation has been to disperse air defense assets, hide them, and wait for U.S. aircraft to descend for direct attack. At lower altitude, the radar geometry changes. The window opens. Iranian SAM crews have a brief window to engage. If the March 19th incident is what the anonymous sources say it is, that doctrine produced a result. It is the most significant publicly acknowledged loss event for U.S. stealth aviation during Operation Epic Fury. The aircraft landed, the pilot lived, the airframe is being assessed. But Iran appears to have done damage to a 5th-generation fighter inside Iranian airspace, and that is a data point that will be studied by every nation that builds air defense and every nation that flies stealth. That is one cost. There is another. USS Gerald R. Ford, the lead ship of the newest U.S. carrier class, was temporarily taken out of active operations during Epic Fury for repair work in Croatia after a fire during combat operations. For part of the campaign, the U.S. was reduced to a single combat active carrier strike group in the theater. USS Abraham Lincoln carried that load alone. USS George H.W. Bush deployed from Norfolk on March 31, 2026 to fill the gap. Until Bush arrived on station, Lincoln and the 10 F-35Cs of VMFA 314 aboard her were doing the work of 2 carrier air wings. There is a ground cost in the campaign that has to be named alongside the air cost. On March 1st, an Iranian drone struck Camp Buehring in Kuwait. 6 U.S. service members from the Army's 103rd Sustainment Command were killed. It was the deadliest single Iranian strike on U.S. personnel during the campaign, and it underscored a doctrinal point the carrier strike group exists to address. Land bases are fixed coordinates. Iran has the precision and the launch capacity to put munitions on fixed coordinates. A carrier at sea is a moving coordinate. The Lincoln does not stay where Iran's targeters last logged her. That mobility is the second half of the F-35C value proposition. The first half is stealth in the air. The second half is unpredictability of the launch deck. The Marine Corps, roughly 10 airframes, 1 deck, operating against the most contested air defense environment any F-35C has flown in. The cost of localized air superiority across the southern Iranian coast was paid in airframe wear, in one near loss, in one fire, and in the hours flown by a squadron that was never meant to be the entire stealth presence at sea in this theater. The numbers. By day 22 of Operation Epic Fury, the U.S. Navy's senior commander in the region, Admiral Brad Cooper, reads out the count. 8,000-plus targets struck, 130-plus Iranian and IRGC vessels eliminated. 2 days later, the count is updated. 9,000 targets, 140 vessels. For context, that is the largest naval elimination by any single coalition since the Second World War. 4 Soleimani-class destroyers, the most capable surface combatants in the IRGC fleet, gone. 16 IRGC mine layers, gone. Underground bunkers, including ones the U.S. confirms were struck by GBU-72 penetrating bombs from B-2s, destroyed. The destruction of the Soleimani class is, on its own, a strategic event. These were the surface ships Iran had positioned as the IRGC Navy's response to a major U.S. naval presence in the Gulf. Their loss reduces Iran's ability to mass surface combat power against a carrier strike group at any future point, regardless of how Epic Fury concludes. 22 nations by week 3 have signed the safe passage statement for the Strait of Hormuz. Royal Navy mine hunters lead the coalition mine clearance operation behind the strikes. The strike numbers come from B-2S. The strike numbers come from F/A-18S. The strike numbers come from Tomahawks fired from U.S. destroyers and submarines. The strike numbers come from F-22s out of Avda. The strike numbers come from coalition aircraft, but the picture those weapons are striking against, the targeting feed, the pre-strike sensor sweep, the post-strike battle damage assessment, the live track on Iranian air defense positions, that picture is being shaped by the F-35. And the F-35, most often pushing that picture from inside contested Iranian airspace, from a position that did not exist on Iran's radar map, is the F-35C off the deck of USS Abraham Lincoln, the Black Knights. 10 aircraft, 1 squadron. This is the breakthrough moment for the F-35 in combat that defense analysts have been waiting on for 2 decades. Every nation that operates the F-35, the United Kingdom, Israel, Japan, Australia, Italy, Norway, the Netherlands, South Korea, and others, is reading the performance data out of Epic Fury and adjusting export decisions, force structure, and adversary planning for the next decade. The performance data is being written by 10 aircraft and the pilots flying them. Resolution. The IRGC has multiple times during this campaign claimed publicly to have struck the USS Abraham Lincoln. The U.S. has denied each claim. CENTCOM has released corresponding video and imagery showing the carrier on station, recovering aircraft, launching aircraft, holding its operating box in the North Arabian Sea. The carrier Iran can see on every commercial maritime tracking site. The carrier Iran knows the rough position of within 100 nautical miles. The carrier Iran has built its narrative around hitting, has stayed in the fight. The aircraft launching from her deck have not been seen at all. That is the asymmetry the Black Knights are operating inside. Iran's air defense, Iran's surveillance, Iran's strategic communications, all of it is calibrated against a carrier they can locate. The weapons coming off that carrier are calibrated against a defensive system that cannot locate them. By March 4th, U.S. localized air superiority across the southern Iranian coast was acknowledged at the level of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. By the time you watch this, that footprint is larger. The strike count is higher. The vessel count is higher. The list of nations watching the F-35 perform inside the most contested airspace it has flown in is longer. And the squadron at the front of it, on the deck where the work was done, is one Marine unit with roughly 10 aircraft. Iran built radar to find every aircraft on Earth. The Black Knights launched from a ship Iran could see. The aircraft they launched, Iran never could.